All right, let's get right into it. We're going to break down this really intense debate that's about so much more than just, does God exist? This is really a clash over the very foundation of knowledge itself. We're talking about a debate where both sides are basically arguing that the other person's entire worldview makes it impossible to know anything for sure.
And this is really the heart of the whole thing. The Christian side throws this out there and it frames the entire conflict. See, they're not just saying God is real. Their argument goes deeper. They're saying that without God as a starting point, you couldn't even prove the ground you're standing on is real. It's a huge claim, right? So how in the world do they get to that point?
Well, to even begin to understand it, you have to see this debate for what it is. It's not about one little piece of evidence. No, it's a head-on collision between two completely different ways of seeing everything, the entire lens you use to look at reality.
So on the one hand, you have the Christian worldview. It starts with the idea that God has revealed himself through our conscience, through creation, through scripture. And in this view, humans have this incredible intrinsic value because they're made in God's image. But then you have the naturalist worldview, which starts from a totally opposite place. There is no supernatural, no God. We live in a material universe, and humans are, as one debater put it, basically stardust, the product of a long, unguided evolutionary process. You can see right away, they're not just disagreeing, they're starting in two different universes, conceptually speaking.
Okay, so this leads us to the first major battleground, logic. I mean, we all use it, right? But where does it come from? Is it something real and unchanging? Both sides need logic to even have a debate, but they could not disagree more on what it actually is.
And this quote from the debate really sums up the Christian position. The argument is that the laws of logic, basic stuff like A cannot be not A at the same time, they aren't just good ideas we came up with. They claim these laws are universal, they're absolute, they're immaterial, because they are a reflection of God's own mind, which is rational and unchanging.
This is their core strategy, and it's called the transcendental argument. Basically, they're not trying to prove God from evidence. They're arguing that you have to assume God exists just to make sense of the evidence in the first place. Think of it like this. It's like trying to argue against the existence of air while you're breathing it. For them, God isn't the conclusion you arrive at. He's the necessary starting point for you to arrive at any conclusion at all.
Now, as you can imagine, the atheist debaters had a lot to say about that. They pushed back hard. They said, well, hold on, why does logic need a creator? Maybe logic just exists on its own, kind of like how you say God just exists. Or, they argued, maybe logic isn't this big cosmic absolute thing. Maybe it's just a useful tool, a human convention we developed, like driving on the right side of the road. It works, so we use it. They also pointed to evolution, suggesting our brains simply evolved to think logically because it helps us survive. And they brought up the fact that there are different kinds of logic, which kind of challenges the idea of one single, perfect, God-given system.
So if you can't agree on the foundation of logic, things get even more complicated when the debate shifts to another pillar of our reality, morality. Where do right and wrong come from?
And to get right to the point, the debate got, well, intense, with this very blunt and shocking question. Now, the point wasn't just to be shocking. It was designed to force both sides to justify their claims. It's one thing to say something is wrong. We all agree it is. But why? What is the ultimate foundation for saying it's wrong? Is it just your personal feeling, a societal preference, or is it an objective, universal truth?
And the answers just show how deep this divide goes. The Christian side says, look, objective morality is grounded in the unchanging, perfect character of God. The reason it's objectively wrong is because humans are made in God's image, which gives them this infinite sacred value. The atheist side, however, grounds morality in purely naturalistic terms. They argue it's wrong because it violates a social contract we've all implicitly agreed to. It causes unimaginable suffering. And, as one debater said, that would be the end of humanity. It's wrong because it's destructive to the species.
And all of this, it leads to a fundamental disagreement about the rules of the game itself. Who has to prove what? Where do you even begin the search for truth?
The Christian debaters argue from what's called a presuppositionalist standpoint. For them, God is not a hypothesis you test with evidence. He's the non-negotiable axiom you start with. You begin with the certainty of God's existence and his revelation, and then you use that foundation to make sense of everything else.
The atheists, of course, take the complete opposite approach. They start with what one of them called the null hypothesis, basically a default position of non-belief, of not being convinced. From their perspective, the burden of proof is 100% on the person making the extraordinary claim, in this case, the claim that a God exists. They're essentially saying, we're not convinced, give us evidence and maybe we'll change our minds.
So when you strip it all down, when you get past all the specific arguments about morality and logic, the debate boils down to one final critical question. What is your ultimate authority? What is that unprovable starting point on which you build your entire worldview?
This quote from one of the Christian debaters really frames how they see the fundamental disagreement. He's arguing that the stalemate isn't about a lack of evidence. From his perspective, the real difference is that one side acknowledges God's authority and the other side actively suppresses that truth. For him, it's not really an intellectual problem. It's a moral one, a choice to either profess or suppress.
And in the end, that really brings it all back to you, doesn't it? As this whole debate shows, everybody, and I mean everybody, has a foundational belief, an ultimate authority, something they take on faith that can't be proven by something even more basic. It's the axiom from which all of your other beliefs flow. And so the real question this debate leaves us with is, what's yours?